Welcome, everybody, to our official second episode of Sundays Are for Contemplation podcast. We are your hosts, Sof
and Nicole.
And we're here with our first ever guest, Sinbad.
Hi there.
How are you doing, Sinbad?
Excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you on this podcast. So, today we wanted to recap a few things. First of all, Wait and Hope Foundation had our first ever exhibition on Friday. Thank you to Mireia for offering us the space. We loved the event, and thank you to all of the artists who were there and everyone who showed up.
And we're excited to see what comes for the future and what we're going to be doing. Some exciting things coming up.
Yes. So yeah, today's episode, I think we wanted to focus a little bit about the origins of maybe past, beyond the foundation, what our philosophies were on getting all of this started. And we thought that Sinbad would be the perfect guest to have because he's kind of the one who got everything started, everything in motion, and yeah.
For sure, I mean, we could talk about the origins of the Campos Eliseos and, the Wait and Hope Foundation. We'd have to go back to Florence about 3 years ago. I went in the search of inspiration and to learn about the history of art, the history of the Medici family, the history of the Renaissance, and I recognized that there were some parallels between the technological advancements that were happening in society with the creation of artificial intelligence, the advent of blockchain technology, and other emerging texts that have the potential to empower humanity in a way that was not possible before. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was similar to the invention of the printing press or the creation of antibiotics, just technological advancements that help humanity advance in leaps and not in steps. And so when I noticed that this technology was happening and that there was an artist movement happening at the same time using the same technology, I knew I had to go to Florence and study the origins of the Renaissance.
Thank you so much. And before we get more into depth, I was actually wondering a lot of things that a big question that our audience will actually be wondering is, why are you wearing this mask? Can you give us a little bit of background behind that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that the character of Sinbad is an amalgamation of different characters that have been prominent through history, from literary figures to legends from ancient literary history, from the Orient, and from different legends around the world, whether it's ancient Greece or ancient Rome or even the Persian legends of the East. And for me, it's a hero or a character that I've created to represent the values of society.
So. And we wanted to ask, so Sinbad is obviously not your real name, so why have you chosen to stay anonymous in the space? Is there a specific reason?
There's a lot of reasons why I've chosen to stay anonymous, but I think one of the most prominent ones is that at the end of the day, this movement that we're trying to foment and to create and to uphold is one that empowers the individual and empowers society. And for me personally, I'd rather represent the values that I want society to uphold than upbring my ego or for people to focus on who's behind the mask. At the end of the day, the important things are, like I said, the values that represent this movement and not the person or the individual behind the mask.
Right. And I also wanted to ask, with our foundation, our whole focus is to incorporate people that are not aware of what's going on in the change. Is there anything that do you think people resonate with this Renaissance idea, or maybe how do you think we can incorporate others more into this new technological shift?
Sure, I think people are curious about technology. People experiment with AI tools, from ChatGPT to Midjourney. AI technology, it accelerates human progress, and people are always excited to use these tools. But when you look at historically what revolutionary movements and intellectual movements and initiatives that actually cause transcendental and actual paradigm shifts, you don't actually need a whole majority of the population. You need about 10 to 15% of people who are very passionate about implementing these changes. And so right now, the use of this technology, the mass adoption, in a grander scale, it looks small, But how quickly, I mean, think about ChatGPT as an example, how quickly that was adopted in less than a year. It became one of the biggest companies in the world because that the actual value that these tools are giving is scalable and it adds that much value. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And speaking about those 10% of people that you think are the ones who have the capacities to sort of transform the world, given that you're also prominent in the Web3 space yourself, who do you think are some prominent figures in this space, either before you started or currently and in the future, that really helped you or that you believe are part of that 10%?
Sure. I mean, that's a difficult question because I think that everyone who is still a part of Web3 actively and upholds these values are so important to the movement because like I said, only 10 to 15% of people actually participate in these transcendental movements, and so I think every individual is important. But I do think of some figures that were important for me when I was first starting to collect digital artwork and to learn about the industry and the potentials of the technology. And I think first of all, I had to thank Selena Tabacchi. She's an Italian curator and gallerist, and she officially did the first Rafika Nadal show in Florence, Italy, while I was living there, and she helped curate the first crypto art exhibition at d'Art Milano, which was at the Museum of della Permanente, the Permanent Museum of Milan. And I think a lot of what I learned and I started to synthesize and absorb the potential of what this movement could be was when I saw her curatorial skills in a museum level, where it wasn't just looking at artwork on a phone or on an Instagram feed. I saw it in a museum setting, and I saw that there was this very powerful visual rhetoric that came from digitally native artwork, and I think that's what inspired me to pursue this not a career, but this path as a collector of digital art. So I think first of all, Serena Tawaki, and I can name a lot of other influential people, but Serena I think was the first one to kind of push me into the deep end.
Yeah. Sorry, super amazing. I also wanted to ask specifically to thank the Campos and the Collectors Group. Maybe you can talk a bit more about like your organization as itself and like the kind of people that you look to join this group and how it's much more than just art collectors. We said what we've spoken before about how it's like intellectuals that have similar philosophies, and that's how Sof and I originally got involved was like through this collectors group.
Yeah, I think 30C, like I said earlier, I moved to Florence to study the history of the Renaissance, and I think like I have a book here right in front of me that has been very impactful in learning about the history of the Renaissance. It's a very condensed version of the Medici dynasty, and for those who are watching or joining us today, the Medici were a very powerful banking family in Renaissance Europe, who through their patronage were able to foment the Renaissance movement. And I think that was a big inspiration for the group, where we really wanted to inspire enlightened patronage, where the collectors of artworks are actively participating in the creative process of artists and learning about art history, learning about art theory, learning about philosophy and different values that we want to share through the visual rhetoric of artworks. And so I think we can spend hours talking about it, but I think very concisely, the inspiration of 30CE was to inspire young patrons of art to actively participate in the movement, not maybe by creating, but through conversation and through dialogue and discourse, represent their values through the artwork that they commission or that they collect, but also to inspire artists through their values.
I have a feeling that your opinion on community is very strong. And I think that's something that Nicole and we tried to briefly touch on in our last episode, our first one, that we really prioritize kind of engaging in your community often. And that's why we're super happy to be able to host exhibitions like the one that we did on Friday. And I kind of wanted to ask you, Sinbad, a little bit on how you envision what the intersection of being in the digital space and real life spaces, like how that would progress for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that it's apart from internally what we look at within the collectors group and the different projects that we have through Linda and through the foundation and other endeavors that we have. I think it's an overall question about society. Ever since the invention of all these technologies that have created a global network of the internet through social media and whatever, where everyone is connected to each other, I think that there's this lack of an emphasis on in-person interaction. And I think there's some criticism and concerns from people, which I guess is justified, that lack of in-person interaction is dangerous and that just being online is detrimental to society. And to be honest, I don't have a fully formed opinion, but I think, ignorantly speaking, I think that this digital communication is actually allowing us to reach so many other people that we would never we would never have had access to, and to connect with others that are out of our personal network. And so now going to digital art, it's the same way. It's the same thing. Now artists and artworks have the ability to present this visual rhetoric, these ideas that would never have reached people around the world, but because of technology, you can. Now, obviously, that there are values that you can get from in-person interaction versus seeing something digitally. Like if you look at the Mona Lisa, it's different to see it on the internet or on your browser versus going to the Louvre and experiencing it. But the fact that it's on the internet, it allows people that have never been to Paris or that have never been, or that may never have the access to go to Paris to learn about it, right? And it's not the same thing, but by having access to this information, it empowers them. So, same thing. It might not be the same, and we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but I think that having this digitally native community that shares intellectual discourse and dialogue and ideas inspires people to learn and to be curious, and it actually adds more value to the physical experience, right? So you learn about the Mona Lisa on the internet, but when you go see it in person, it means that much more because you're already educated about it and you've had dialogue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I also wanted to ask another question, but moving a bit more towards your personal / anonymous life. But I know we've spoken before that you said some complex things happened to you, and it kind of changed this well, we had this very interesting conversation, the three of us, the other day about how when negative things happen in your life, there's always an opportunity that you might have never been able to see unless it happened. So I was hoping maybe you could tell us a bit about your circumstances and how it fed into 30 Campos and the whole digital enlightenment that you're trying to create.
For sure. Obviously I don't want to get too much into detail because I know I can spend hours talking about all the different projects and the different inspirations that led to this beautiful thing that we've built over the past few years. But to be honest, I think that one of the major takeaways that I've had from life in my young and naive life so far is that misfortune is something that happens to everyone, and the way that we deal with it is honestly what builds our character. Without getting too much into the detail, I think that was one of the goals for 30CE, is about leaving the world a better place than we found it, through discourse and through inspiring. And for me, one of the most meaningful things in everything that we've done is when I get to talk to future collectors or artists, and I see that spark in their eyes when they can dream about the potential they have to change the world for the better.
Sorry everyone, in this clip we experienced some technical difficulties and unfortunately we have to skip over quite a bit. But that being said, thank you so much for listening.
No, yeah, and for me it's, like I said, watching you guys do this and challenge your limits at your age. For people your age to be doing all you said, an internship and going through a very prestigious university at that, and to be starting a non-profit foundation and to be actively working on international events and productions. Like, yeah, for you personally it might not seem like much, but for everyone else who's watching us around the world, you guys are doing things that people would dream of achieving, and you're not even 25 yet. And so first of all, I want to commend you for that, and I also want to give a reminder to our viewers that when you really care about something and you have a dream and it's important enough, that there's always a way to make it a reality. And these girls are a testament and a living example of what we should be following, of not ignoring, but acknowledging and accepting the harshness of life and reality, and having a foot focused on the future and just planted there and dreaming of a better future. And you girls inspire me every day to continue with our mission at 30C, especially now that the Waiting Home Foundation is in full production and full throttle. I'm so excited for the different collaborations we're going to do around the world.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sinbad. It's been an honor having you here today on this episode. I think this has been a really amazing conversation. Relative to how long we normally talk, definitely we could speak on this, I know, for hours and hours. But yeah, I think I'm super happy with what we've done here so far.
Yeah, me too. And I'm very excited of what's to come, looking towards the future. But
So yeah, if I can close with a couple of things, like the girl said, it's difficult to encapsulate everything that we've been building over the past few years into a 20-minute, 30-minute podcast, but I think that it gets the ball rolling into inspiring our viewers and our listeners to have a second of a glimpse into what we're envisioning, and hopefully it opens the door to conversation between our viewers and us. And at the end of the day, that's what the important thing is to globalize a movement, an ideology that's inspired in justice, in truth, in virtue, and all of these universal values that are important to everyone. And so whether people are listening to us from Europe or from the Americas or wherever they are, if they feel inspired by this and they reach out to us and they actively participate in our conversations, whether it's virtually or in person, that's how movements start. And so I'm so excited for you girls. Like I said, this podcast is a great initiative, and I'm so excited to see the amazing people that are going to be participating in this and inspiring hundreds and thousands of people around the world someday. Because I admire you because I know you personally, but I know that the rest of the world looks up to you and will look up to you for leadership, because the values that you represent and the people that you are worthy of admiration. And so if I can ask the audience for a round of applause, I would ask it 1,000 times. But in the meantime, wait and hope.